Let's try to read the footage here from the paper from 1934. Engineer
Alright,
sinks
we're
shaft
listening.
under Fort Moore Hill to
Explore on
find
YouTube.
maze of
See what
tunnels
we
and
find.
priceless treasures of legendary inhabitants. Busy Los Angeles, although little realizing
This
it
is a
in the hustle and
documentary
bustle
about
of
lizard
modern
people.
existence, stands above a
Expose.
lost
I
city of
guess it's a
catacombs,
documentary. Just a
filled with
guy on YouTube
incalculable
talking, but
treasure and
he
imperishable
obviously did
records
some
of a race
research.
of humans further advanced intellectually and scientifically than even the highest type of present-day peoples, in the belief of G. Warren Shufelt, geophysical mining engineer now engaged in an attempt to wrest from the lost city deep in the earth below Fort Moore Hill the secrets of the lizard people of legendary fame in the
Wow.
medicine lodges of the American Indian. Now, so firmly does Shufelt and his little staff of assistants believe that a maze of catacombs and priceless golden tablets are to be found beneath downtown Los Angeles that the engineer and his aides have already driven a shaft 250 foot deep into the ground, the mouth of the shaft being on the old Banning property on the North Hill.
Hello everybody, my name is Joffre and I'm a guide here in Lisbon where I was born.
Overlooking Sunset Boulevard, Spring Street, and North Broadway. And so convinced is the engineer of the infallibility of the radio X-ray perfected by him for detecting the presence of not only minerals and tunnels below the surface of the ground, but the very existence of the lizard people. This is an apparatus which with, he says, he has traced a pattern of catacombs and vaults. There we have the map. Catacombs and vaults forming the lost city of the lizard people, that he plans to continue sending his shaft downward until he has reached a depth of 1,000 feet before discontinuing
Strange
operations.
people live on the site of Los Angeles 5,000
Now
years
the
ago.
legend supplies and clue. No idea what that means. Shufelt learned of the legend of the lizard people after his radio X-ray had led him hither and yon over an area extending from the public library on West 5th Street to the Southwest Museum on Museum Drive at the foot of Mount Washington. I knew I was over a pattern of tunnels, the engineer explained yesterday, and I had mapped out the course of the tunnels, the position of the large rooms scattered along the tunnel route, as well as the positions of deposits of gold, but couldn't understand the meaning of it all. Then Shufelt was taken to Little Chief Greenleaf of the Medicine Lodge of the Hopi Indians. This was in Arizona. The English name of the Hopi is El Macklin. The Indian provided the engineer with a legend which, according to both men, dovetails exactly with what Shufelt says he found. Fire destroys all. Now, according to the legend, as imparted to Shufelt by the Hopi elder, the radio X-ray machine has revealed the location of one of 3 lost cities on the Pacific coast. The local one having been dug by the lizard people after the great catastrophe which occurred 5,000 years ago. This legendary catastrophe was in the form of a huge tongue of fire which came out of the southwest and destroyed all life in its path. The path being several hundred miles wide. Now, the city underground was dug as a means of escaping the future fires.
Okay.
The lost city dug with powerful chemicals by the lizard people instead of pick and shovel was drained into the ocean where its tunnels began according to the legend. The tide passing daily in and out of the lower tunnels and portals and forcing air into the upper tunnels provided ventilation and cleansed and sanitized the lower tunnels from the chemicals, according to the legend. Large rooms. In the domes of the hills above the city of labyrinths housed thousands of families. In the manner of tall buildings and imperishable food supplies of the herb variety were stored in the catacombs to provide subsistence for the lizard folk for great lengths of time, as the next fire swept over the earth. Even the city was laid out like a lizard, according to the article. The lizard people, the legend has it, regarded the lizard as the symbol of long life. Their city is laid out like a lizard,
fires, what
according
are
to
they
the
talking
legend.
about? Could that be
Its
a
tail to the
reference
southwest,
to
far below 5th and Hope Streets. Its head to the northeast, at
like how
Lookout
the
and Marta
dinosaurs
Streets.
died?
The
We
city's
believe they were
icy
wiped
room
out by
is
what?
situated directly under South
Maybe that's
Broadway
the
Street,
fire they're
near 2nd
referring
Street,
to.
according to
Or
Schufelt
some
and the legend.
event like that.
This key room is the directory to all parts of the city and to all recorded tablets. This is fascinating.
Dry tunnel.
The legend states
Water.
that
I
all
don't know,
records
this
were
map
kept
don't
on
make
gold
sense.
tablets, 4 feet long and 14 inches wide. On these tablets of gold having been the symbol to the legendary lizard people, the symbol of life, will be found the recorded history of the Mayans, and on one particular tablet, the southwest corner of which will be missing, is to be found the record of the origins of the human race. The tablets were photographed. Schufelt stated he has taken X-ray pictures of 37 such tablets, 3 of which have their southwest corners cut off. And I quote, "My X-ray pictures of tunnels and rooms which are subsurface voids and of gold pictures with perfect corners, sides, and ends are scientific proof of their existence," Schufelt said. However, the legendary story must remain speculative until unearthed by excavation. The lizard people, according to Macklin, were of much higher type of intellectuality, and accomplishments of their 9-year-old children were equal to those of present-day college graduates, he said. So greatly advanced scientifically were these people that in addition to perfecting a chemical solution by which they bored underground without removing earth and rock, they also developed a cement far stronger and better than any in the modern times, with which they lined their tunnels and rooms. Macklin said legendary advice to American Indians was to seek the lost city in an area with
What's this?
Lizard Men. Right before we started filming Legends of the Year. Before we get any further, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, go to our About section, check out legendsofsuperstitionmountains.com for all the other information. Bark notes, archival type videos, all kinds of stuff. Continuing down our rabbit hole for this year and going into next year. This next story is one that Mr. Frank Augustine referenced. Now, he did a very, very brief, you could almost call it even, I don't know, he was shorter than brief. And we're going to take you there just so you revisit what Frank had to say. when it comes to the Superstition Mountains, you hear a lot of stories and legends, UFOs, Mayans, lizard men. Right before
Mayans,
we started filming the
I
Legend
don't know
show,
if we should
I
classify
was in a family
Mayans
room,
as labeled as
and my
aliens
wife
and
Angie
lizard
walks
people.
in, and she looked at me and said,
I'm worried about you and Woody going back in the mountains. I'm like, why? We can take care of ourselves. So she hands me her cell phone. She says, read this. So there's a story on there about an occurrence that supposedly took place in the superstitions. There was this woman. She decided she's going to take a hike up one of the mountains. So she hikes all the way up, almost to the top of this one mountain. And she looks across the valley, and she sees something shine. You know, like if you had a mirror, something reflecting off of it. So she climbs all the way down that mountain and hikes up the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And when she gets up by the shiny thing, she trips and she falls into like a cave. So when she fell, she's like laying on her back, and she opens her eyes up, and standing in front of her was this huge lizard man.
Wow.
And the lizard man had I won't say it, but you can imagine what it was. So the lizard man in the story rapes her, and the next thing she knows, she's on the Apache Trail driving toward Apache Junction. So I started laughing. And Angie looked at me seriously. She says, laugh now, cry later.
Okay, now, welcome back. We're going to go into the story, and the story is known. It's actually been out there and been published and so forth. It's known as Angie. It has to do with someone named Angie. She has a sister named Susan. But other than that, we don't got much information about her. Sherry Hinkle was told the story by her sister Phyllis Davis. And Phyllis Davis supposedly met Angie and talked to her and then put all the material together, and then Sherry Hinkle got the whole written story then from the woman named Angie, if that's even her name. She lived in Apache Junction. She had a little time off, and she liked to go out and hike in the foothills of the Superstition Mountains. So she goes out, and she's hiking one day, and she's just kind of covering around. She looks up and sees a shiny rock. So she decides to hike up to that shiny rock. It's an outcropping of quartz, and it's really nice looking, but it's way too big to haul back down the mountain. So she works and works at it, trying to break off a small piece of it. She breaks off a little piece of it, kind of thinking, well, that's kind of neat and all this stuff, because she likes to collect little rocks, take them home from her trips. As she finishes this, she looks over and sees a little cave, and she's like, kind of get excited, because she's like, wow, I wonder if that's something like archaeological. There'd be something in there, something indigenous, or, you know, what was that about? So she climbs up, works her way up to this cave, gets up to it, starts to look inside, and as she starts to go in, she realizes it's pretty clean, doesn't look like even any animal's been in there, but there's nothing else in there, nothing archaeological. A little disappointed, but it's cooler. Day's warmed up. She's enjoying the cool air in there. She sits there, drinks from her canteen, chills out for a while, and then she decides, well, I only got a little flashlight. She has a little flashlight on her keychain that she looks around in the cave with, but she said, it's not enough light really to walk all the way back down in the dark, so I'm going to have to get out of here, start back to my car. She goes to leave. Next thing she knows is she feels something grabs her by the leg. She looks back, thinks it's some people she knows, or someone with masks on, and she jokes with them, kind of like, what are you guys doing up here? What kind of prank is this? And then she just suddenly said, she started getting kind of feeling alarmed, like, what's going on, because they're being kind of rough, and then she blacks out. She doesn't really remember any of this initially at first. She just knows she went hiking. And we'll jump ahead and then come back to this, because what happens is she wakes up in her car. And it's night, and she's driving, and she's kind of thrown off that she suddenly realizes she's driving, like, where's my head been? Where's my mind been? What am I doing? You know, I'm on the road heading home. She gets home. She ends up taking a shower for like 2 hours. She can't get herself clean, and she's washing and washing. She gets done, makes herself dinner, Turns on the TV. She said she couldn't watch the TV. She seems totally something's in the back of her mind bothering her. And then on top of it, additionally, she just picks at her food. She realizes she's not hungry. She's not feeling right. Next day, her sister Susan comes over and checks on her because she wasn't answering her phone, finds her in bed. After a few days of this, she's not really eating. She's just staying in bed. She's just kind of listless. Her sister convinced her to go to the doctor. She goes to the doctor. Doctor says it's probably the flu or something. Rest a little, get back to work. Spends a couple more days off, pulls herself together, goes back to work. She works at a pet shop. She goes in the pet shop and everything's fine the first day or so. She's not quite herself still, but she's doing better. And then someone comes in with a lizard of sort. She said she never had any problem with lizards on hikes and stuff. She'd see them and stuff but the person brought it in. She said there was something revolting and terrorized her. She literally almost went into an anxiety or panic attack. And it bothered her, and she had to literally go home for the day because of this, because she just was so unnerved. But she had no clue why. So she goes home, she talks to her sister, and then a friend, they talk to some friends, and a friend says, I know a hypnotherapist. Why don't you go to them and see what's there? Because you can't remember anything. Because she's saying, I don't know of anything that's bothering me, but there's obviously something affecting me. So they take her to a hypnotherapist. He puts her under. He finds out that she'd been raped. He thinks, oh, okay, this is what happened. She'd been out, someone accosted her, she was raped, and she has this suppressed stuff. And then the hypnotherapist finds out she has this overlaid imagination where she has this some sort of lizard people that have raped her. But then the hypnotherapist starts realizing there's way too much detail to this story. And he starts working with her on it. He really wants her to recommend her to someone else, but she doesn't want to talk to anybody else at this point. Other than her sister, Sherry Hinkle's sister, Phyllis, and maybe another friend, she doesn't really want anyone else to know. So she tells the therapist, I'll just keep working with you. What comes out of the story is, so when she blacks out, it appears that it's when she's in that cave. Something grabbed her. She thought she saw someone wearing masks. She blacks out. When she wakes up, she's still in a cave, but it's not quite the same cave. She said she was in some sort of gelatin or gel or something. It was holding her down on something. She wasn't quite sure what she was on. She was trying to look around. There really wasn't anything. And there were these lizard people. Now, she thought at that time that it was still something of a joke. She thought they had to be wearing masks and like some sort of like outfits, and someone playing a practical joke. And then she realized maybe this is really serious. They're going to rape me, but they're doing this to hide their identities. And so she tried to plead with them, as like, I don't know what you're doing. I've never seen your faces. Just let me go. She was hoping to get through to them. Now, she said 2 of them had kind of greenish skin. They had a ridge up on their top of their head. The green kind of turned into gray going down the backside. There was a lot of them wore little black outfits. And they had a dragon within a circle that had a star in it. And then they had these other patterns on them. And some of them were black. The 2 that were with her primarily
Sound like Star Wars.
had on these, I remember those white outfits. But the same decals or whatever. And she said they had very cruel eyes.
And Deep Space Nine, eh? Yeah, maybe Deep
So
Space
she's laying
Nine,
there and she
too.
starts to panic because she suddenly realizes, oh my God,
People who
I've been
come from the
accosted by
other
these
side of
people. They're
the
wearing masks.
portal.
They're going to rape me. Oh my
who,
God. She starts panicking, screaming, and just carrying on, fighting
for the
everything she can. And she
Shapeshifters.
said they had a blue light or something, in a box or something, they moved towards her. And she said, I black out again. So she comes to a second time. And this time she comes to, and she said she was in like an oval-shaped room. And she lay in there, and there's still a few of those black, the lizard people in the black, and there's the ones that were in the white outfits, but now there's one in an orange jumpsuit, and he has other insignia like these inverted triangles and different stuff. She said he had a badge on his chest that had like, it moved, like the stars in it moved and stuff. It was very kind of odd looking. And she's starting to realize the seriousness of what's going on, like she's losing her mind or something. The same gelatin type, whatever it is holding her down on something, and she's looking around this room. And she realizes the thing that's looking at her, all the others have yellow eyes. This one had blue. So she thought they seemed empathetic. So she was trying to tell it, please, please help me.
Does it have blue
Please
eyes?
help me. You're scaring me. And she said, and then it reached out and touched her with something. And her whole body relaxed, which was weird to her because she said, my mind's still scrambling. I'm still feeling mentally like I'm panicked, but my body is totally relaxed and it won't fight. And she said, I'm just laying there and thinking, oh my God. So she's looking around the room, trying to figure out where am I, try to get any details for the police, what's happening. And she looks over and sees these bags, some sort of bags hanging from the wall, and there's movement in them. And she says it reminded her of the movement in her dog's belly when it had puppies. And that put her into a panic attack. She turns her eyes, looks, and one of the reptilian creatures that's in
I've
white
never
undoes his pants
experienced a
and
dog belly when
he's
it's
about to
pregnant.
proceed to have sex with her. She says then everything, whatever they had done to her, just she let loose. She's fighting, trying to get out of the gelatin, whatever it is, and she's starting to move herself forward, getting out of this stuff. And as she's starting to break free and stuff and starts screaming and yelling, something else happens and boom, she goes completely to black again as she feels the thing start to lean, the pressure come on her. So the therapist works with her for quite some time. She won't go in the mountains ever again. But she's like, she figures if these things ever want to get her, she has no defense. She's able to carry on with her life through the therapy and everything. And that's the story that Sherry Hinkle would tell on a number of radio shows and publish in a number of places. It's very interesting. The therapist himself said, told Angie, the girl in the story, is that he wouldn't have believed it and believed she was probably her imagination carried away, but he said there was so much detail of every piece of insignia, everything in the Oval Room. She had so much detail, but none of it was relevant to anything he'd ever heard of. So he said
Why would it
she
be?
had way too much detail, seemed to be really too much in the place, and he said she was genuinely seemed terrified. However, he worked with her on this therapy and she led a normal life. She will deny this if she's ever contacted by someone. I don't know if they name Angie or Susan as actually of a real person, or if those names were used just basically to cover up on this whole story. Now the story, I find some interest in it, because now while this story happens in March of 2000, what's really odd is that there is a secondary story that goes with this. And the author of it, again, is Sherry Hinkle. Now, these are the two primary. I know you'll say, oh, there's other lizard stories and this and that. But it's kind of a bit of an odd thing because it's the same author again. And she did some interviews. Now, this one takes place sometime later in the 2000s, around 2010. That she starts telling it. She never gives a date or anything. She says her son Mark and his friend Harry are out exploring out behind their house by Black Mountain, which she calls Black Mountain. And while out there, they find this cave or something similar to what's on the other story. But this story has a little bit of a difference. They get in the cave and they're messing around and they find a door. And it's like an iron door, but it's sealed shut or something. It looks very old. And they mess around with it a little, nothing's happening. They try to take the door open and nothing. But as they're getting ready to leave, they're looking around and there's nothing really in there, but then they find this metal rod. It's a short metal rod and it has like a cap on the end. And there's some little kind of like some sort of glyphs on it. Not necessarily hieroglyphics or anything like that, but there's some sort of glyphs along it. So she said the boys kind of got creeped out a little being in there, decided to get out. As soon as they got out and they're getting out, they looked back and they saw something greenish, grayish climbing out the hole that they'd went into and came out after them. So they ran down, ran home, got home just out of breath, came home and started telling her all about the story. Said, look, we went up here, found this little cave opening, went down. There was another kind of opening there. We went in there. There was this door, all this stuff. She's kind of thinking they're making a lot of this up. But then they produced this little metal rod. And they show her the metal rod. She takes it and she's looking at it. Said there's nothing to twist on it, push on it, nothing. It's just like a solid metal rod with this little cap on it. The cap didn't do anything come off. She looks at it, puts it aside, puts it away. Doesn't think anything more of it. Tells the boys get to bed. She realizes they got an overactive imagination. Who knows what they found. That night, Mark's in bed, and he starts screaming and yelling. She comes running down the hall. He says meets her at the door. Something trying to get in my window. She goes over, pulls open the drapes, and there's this reptilian-looking thing with greenish-gray head, and it's got a hand on the window, and it's trying to work on the window. She has a flashlight, and she's holding it at it, and she's trying to reach around in the room to find something to kind of hit it with. He said suddenly it just stops, stares at her, does a weird hissing noise, and then just is gone. So what Sherry said, she figured it wanted to retrieve that bar. So what she did was the next day she went out to that cave. She just loudly talked about it outside, threw it back down into the hole, and they were never bothered again. Now,
Well, their fatigue could be in part to so many unruly passengers lately. One American Airlines passenger was caught on camera growling and hissing during a flight.
Incredible video. They've since been arrested. Fox 35's Chelsea Edwards spoke with someone on that flight.
Sit down now. You can't hold us.
Watch as this belligerent passenger argues with a pilot on this American Airlines flight from LA to Salt Lake City.
Sit. You see anyone else get down? Sit.
The passenger then appears to stumble backwards through the aisle and pull his face mask over his eyes before shouting,
"Don't find it! Really?"
Once seated, the passenger appears to growl, snarl, and chew on his mask, visibly agitated.
He was swearing, he was yelling, he was flipping them off.
Dennis Bush was connecting through LA from Hawaii and started shooting this video after the first incident halfway through the flight, directed at a woman seated nearby.
He started saying that that wasn't her seat, that they didn't belong there. And the couple was of Asian descent, and it was very uncomfortable. She started to cry, realized this was going to be more than just one racist outburst.
Bush says the passenger then directed his anger toward the flight staff, repeatedly getting out of his seat to confront them.
Each time that he got up, you could just feel the anxiety in the whole cabin as everyone kind of tensed up, not knowing what was going to happen. The flight crew really asked us to not engage, and I think everyone could just kind of see that we were probably in the midst of a loose cannon.
He says there were rumors swirling through the cabin about possibly diverting the flight, but learned that they were close enough to land as planned. Once the plane arrived at the gate, authorities called.
Fans claim they saw Justin Bieber turn into a giant reptile.
In simple terms, there is a predator race.
Just to be clear, there's no evidence that an alien race of 12 feet tall, blood-drinking reptilian humanoids secretly controls the world.
Are the allegations true that you're secretly a lizard? I'm gonna have to go with no.
Still, this conspiracy theory is driving some people to murder.
Their father confessing to authorities that he killed them. He believed his children possessed serpent DNA.
911, where's your emergency?
He grabbed me and he told me, "You press this trigger." Oh my God! He's dead. He's dead.
With Photo Vibrance, you can transform any photo into a mesmerizing moving image in just a few clicks. A lot of conspiracy theories claim there's some secret shadowy force clandestinely controlling world events. But who exactly is pulling the strings? The Freemasons? The Illuminati? To a small but vocal group, the culprits are lizards, extraterrestrial iguana-like creatures that eat people.
They're feeding off humanity. They've turned humanity into a slave race. They demand human sacrifice.
One small 2013 survey estimated around 4% of Americans believe the Earth is ruled by evil reptilians. And if you've personally never seen any lizard people walking around, well, that's because, as the theory goes, these aliens are shapeshifters.
The Queen and Prince Philip are not human. They shapeshift from human form into lizard form.
According to believers, most prominent politicians, business people, and celebrities are secretly reptiles.
So the core tenets of the reptile alien conspiracy theory are that a group of lizard-like humanoid aliens, often said to be from the planet Alpha Draconis, came to Earth in ancient times and have either intermarried with humans or simply taken human form in order to pose as our leaders and take control of the human race. And if we step out of line, they murder us.
That's how much Bill Gates is a reptilian. He was just shape-shifting, growing a big-ass long tail.
And online, lizard hunters scour images of famous people looking for moments when they accidentally drop their human disguises.
His two bottom teeth remind me of snake teeth.
Like, look at how the face, like, lays on the head. What? This shit looks like, whoa! What the
See the neck? See the ridges, the bone comes all the way across, stops here.
Sherry Shriner was one of the most popular online reptile sleuths.
Just a poor woman who lives in the backwoods of Ohio. I'm trying to save mankind, kill off the aliens.
But Shriner didn't just analyze celebrity faces. She was also a prophet of doom, an apocalyptic preacher spreading the reptile gospel to an audience of tens of thousands through platforms like Facebook and YouTube.
Look at YouTube, type in reptilian humans or reptilian shapeshifters or cloned humans. This is stuff I've been hammering about for over a decade.
According to her, not only were actors and world leaders secret serpents, but most humans, including your own friends and family, could not be trusted.
Most of the people we're looking at are fakes. Out of every 4 humans, only 1 is real, has real human DNA.
She demanded money and devotion from her followers. And eventually, Shriner began to face allegations that she was running a cult. Maybe the first sign that something was wrong was the death of Kelly Pengilly in 2012. The 22-year-old died of an apparent suicide, seeming to believe her demise would somehow aid Shriner's cosmic war against evil. Pengilly's loved ones blamed Shriner.
Cosmic war.
For as long as I can remember, I've had an interest in what some people condescendingly term conspiracy theory. You see, I was born November 22nd, the anniversary of John F. Kennedy's assassination. And every year on my birthday, there's been televised specials on practically every channel talking about magic bullets, grassy knolls, other shooters, as well as CIA, FBI, and mafia involvement. Even by the age of 10, this spoke to me. And of course there were UFOs, the Illuminati, occult Nazis, organized satanic networks, faked moon landings, and CIA mind control programs. Hell, even if this is all bullshit, it was fun to read about. It was in 2000 that I first discovered David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret. In it he writes about a global conspiracy, a hidden hand manipulating humanity's destiny through the shadows, using those who seem to be in power. And the goal of these shadow people? Nothing less than an Orwellian global superstate with total control at the hands of an ancient reptilian shape-shifting race. So we took a ferry to the Isle of Wight to spend the day with David Icke, Britain's leading conspiracy evangelist and the one man standing between us and total enslavement.
Hey! Kev,
Mr.
nice to
Icke.
meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Good trip?
Yes, it was.
Welcome to my abode. There's not much to see, but I like it.
What do we got here?
Well, this is things that I've collected over the years. This is fantastic. Someone in Hawaii actually painted this. This is what the painting is. This is the original of the front cover of my last book, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, The Lion Sleeps No More. And I asked my great friend, an artist called Neil Haig, to paint this picture for me with particularly those eyes. And that's humanity saying, no more, enough. No more little me, we're not having it anymore.
In In 1991, David Icke didn't believe in secret shape-shifting lizard fascists. He was a television celebrity. After arthritis had ended a promising career in football, he'd become a broadcaster. But that all ended in one remarkable appearance on The Terry Wogan Show.
David Icke.
In a turquoise tracksuit, he'd announced that he was the son of God, and the world would be ending that year. It didn't, and Icke seemed destined to disappear beneath a typhoon of public laughter.
So it's quite funny, really. You know, 2,000 years ago, had a guy called Jesus sat here and said these same things, you would still be laughing. It's really, really funny that we've not really moved on that much.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
Fine.
But Icke wouldn't disappear. He began to write. And over a series of increasingly successful books, he began to outline his philosophy. Humankind was not in charge of its destiny. It was the unwitting prisoner of a race of shape-shifting lizards who occupied the roles in the highest echelons of society. From presidents to royal families, all trusted public figures were secretly part of a reptilian, Satanist pedophile group who had been on this planet for centuries. People began to take notice of Icke, and today he spends most of his year preaching to amphitheaters full of fans. He's still making startling revelations, and recently he declared the moon to be a hollowed-out planetoid space station from which our minds are controlled. The lizard's very own Death Star.
Don't mention the reptiles.
Don't mention the reptiles, yeah. Because there were people, when this started to come in, people who were kind of into my stuff, up to that point, which was kind of regular fight. Well, it was a bit strange because it was all the way the war was manipulated by a few people, but it was all kind of regular stuff. And then I came across with this stuff, and it was
Get
like,
it out of the way.
Don't mention the reptiles. They'll just laugh at you again. I said, I know, but I've seen enough and heard enough to believe that it's real, and so I say it. I don't care about the consequences for me. Are you frightened? No. I'm not. I don't care. Because the consequences for the world and my children and my grandchildren and everyone else's of humans not intervening in this process that's going on now ever more quickly are that we are condemning our children and grandchildren. Indeed, ourselves, it's that close to a world that George Orwell so massively understated.
Can we have a look at where the work gets done, where it all happens?
This is where it all happens, and as you can see, it's really small.
It is really small.
Because, you know, I look at my life, and I don't see my life as a life anymore. I haven't for a while. I see it as a job.
Mm. So this is the new one.
Yeah, this is this is the German version, isn't it? Look at the size of it.
Yeah.
350,000 words. That, in one book, is the scale of information that has come into my life about these things. See, that is not a theory. That is evidence supporting a fact.
What was like the first book that really struck you? Because I know there was a couple for me, but you're familiar with Robert Anton Wilson? And I just liked it because it was funny and it tied a lot of points of interest together. And he sort of pointed me in different directions, even though he wasn't really a conspiracy theorist trying to say anything. He put things together I never saw. You know, he'd connect dots that had never occurred to me, which turned me to like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and some of these other things.
That you've just hit the nail right on the head of my work and what you need to do to understand what's going on. Connect the dots. Mm. See, there are dots like banking, government, all these different things. 9/11, which in and of themselves are interesting, and you can see that something's not right. But when you connect the dots between apparently unconnected people and situations and organizations, that's when the tapestry appears and you go, whoa, so that's what's happening.
David had told us that his first moment of enlightenment had occurred when a voice entered his head while shopping with his son on the seafront.
This is the newsagent I told you about, where basically it all started. I was walking along here and I walked in this door and turned to where Gareth was reading his Spin Train books, and this is where it happened, just the other side of this door, where I'm like, what's going on? Go and look at the books on the far side. What? And that's where it started, 1990, March 1990. And I never thought it was going to lead where it has, but it has. Yeah.
Well, it's a great beginning. Platform fun.
In simple terms, there is a predator race which take a reptilian form. They're feeding off humanity. They've turned humanity into a slave race. They demand human sacrifice. That's where Satanism comes in. They feed off human energy, particularly feed off the energy of children.
David's latest revelations have been about the moon. Far from a lump of benign rock orbiting us, it is in fact an artificial construct, a gigantic spacecraft, probably a hollowed-out planetoid. It is from the moon that the nefarious Illuminati manipulate the collective human mind, warping our perception of reality.
I'm saying it's broadcasting something, that it acts as a blocking frequency that stops us seeing and perceiving things that we would normally perceive. That is creating what I call the moon matrix, or the Saturn moon matrix, and it's basically having the effect of the fake reality in the Matrix movies.
I guess that makes David the Isle of Wight's very own Neo.
Wow.
According to Ike, the Isle of Wight is a world within a world, with Freemasonry and Satanism at its center. The ancient ley lines scoring the landscape make it a powerful spiritual hub.
I think the plan is he's going to show us this stone, which is part of a old stone circle.
I think
the main one where apparently satanic rituals happen on a regular basis.
No, these conspiracy theorists do research. They don't do research.
So this is a place here then where you think these rituals, oh, you know these rituals.
These rituals definitely go on at this place up here.
Is this...
It's called the Long Stone. In fact, there's two stones. One's on its side and one's standing up. And it's a beautiful walk this direction.
Let's go. After you,
Cheers, mate. It opens out eventually and you get a fantastic view. It's interesting, when you look at the traits, this is mainstream science, when you look at the traits of what we call the reptilian brain, reptilian genetics, which we all have, one of the traits is an obsession with ritual. So, when you look at all the pomp and ceremony of the royal family, you know, with Buckingham Palace and all this stuff, and all the ceremonies and the guards and the horses and the colours, you're looking at ritual.
But you say that the people that actually live on the island are part of this. There are people, there's a network on the island that are...
Big time. I mean, the Isle of Wight is a beautiful place, and if you pick up the higher levels, the vibrational levels of it, it's a very pleasant place to be. But my goodness me, there is a network of Freemasons, Satanists and pedophiles that run this island.
And this is
they run its
police,
government,
the government, everything. So we're almost here at the top.
Oh,
see
nearly.
There it is. The Long Stone.
There we go. It's funny, you know, you come on a day like this. It's a nice day, and there's families around, and you see these stones. You could see these on May the 1st, Halloween, that kind of in these ritual periods of the year.
And you'd be a totally different story.
You would see something very different.
So
yeah.
This is the center point of this energy then,
Yeah.
that they're trying to tap into.
What they would do, among many other things, you'd have them in their robes and hoods all around here, and you probably have you would have the sacrifice on the slab
This is
here.
the altar.
This is their altar, yeah. And what they're doing, it's horrible, but let's get the truth out. What they're doing is manipulating the sacrifice. The sacrifice knows the sacrifice is coming, and who's going to help them? Look,
right.
At midnight or something, no one. And what they then do is they sacrifice the victim, and they drink the blood immediately, which has this chemical substance in it, and they go crazy. I mean, you know, I've talked to people who've been at these rituals, and how once the sacrifice happens and the blood runs, these people go crazy with blood.
Mad.
There was a man called Stanley Kubrick, the great filmmaker.
I think I've heard of him.
Stanley Kubrick was an insider, and he wanted to expose it. And his last movie was called Eyes Wide Shut.
I've seen it.
Now, Eyes Wide Shut, he died very, very soon after it was presented to executives at the film company, and was given no fanfare whatsoever when it came out.
Didn't they re-edit
just
the hell out
disappeared.
of it as well?
Yes, they did. They took 25 minutes out of it, which he refused to do. Now, he filmed a ritual with Tom Cruise in it, in which I only know more recently was a Rothschild mansion. And what he filmed is a mild version of what goes on. because he knew. And you had the colours. You have most people in the ritual in Eyes Wide Shut were in black. The main guy was in red. Here we go again. Yeah. You had the orgies going on, and you had the people being killed, the lady being killed. But that was such a mild version. I don't know what was in the 25 minutes they took out, mind, because the real version is that there's blood everywhere. We see a hierarchy in the public arena of president, secretaries of state, of prime ministers, secretaries of state, down. Yeah. That's the public hierarchy. The real hierarchy in the shadows is the occult hierarchy. And if you're higher in the occult hierarchy, the satanic hierarchy, which is incredibly hierarchical, it's all hierarchical, then you have more power over someone higher than you in the public hierarchy.
That's crazy. Let's see. Reptilian humanoid. Now I remember watching this.
That you have. Say, for example, what you ate this morning was probably potatoes, was probably tomatoes, and most of those come from somewhere, and those are alien because they do not come from this country. So aliens have been introduced in many parts of the areas for food, for agriculture, to provide shade in the cases of trees and all of that. But not all of them have got a problem, and hence we concentrate only a percentage of those that have escaped from being managed and going into the natural environment, and they're able to spread on their own. Those are the ones which we are concerned about, and those are the ones which South Africans and everybody in the world is concerned about, because they've now escaped captivity, or they've now escaped human intervention, and they are now interacting in the environment and affecting biodiversity by outcompeting indigenous species. And we now know that it is not only a biodiversity issue, but invasive species also affect health. We also know that they also affect food security. But I'm surprised at how much legit, you would think legit
Forces and protecting the
sites they have.
minimizing civilian casualties have long been a cornerstone of the counterinsurgency doctrine.
Not that inside the training process, they talking about reptilians.
When the stakes are high.
We getting into that scary body you do. Let's see if we can find the woman. Huh. Oh, they must be banned them from YouTube. 'Cause ain't nothing coming up. Huh.
Hello everyone. Today we are going to see a
Yeah, I listened to that. Hmm. Real, but I would say it's interesting. Seems like a lot of effort to dismiss it. But I guess if they killing people, you know, you gotta deal with that.
When you want to sort out your Mac once and for all, what do? Most tips from the internet didn't work. You tried emptying the bin, cleaning browser history, everything, but your Mac is still slow and your downloads are painful.
Today, we're exploring the craziest and angriest Karens and Kevins on the net this week. Let's delve